Hey guys, if you want to support the channel, all you gotta do is hit that like and notification bell right underneath, like right now. Comment as much as you want, share this to all your friends if you possibly can, because right now I can maybe help out with my girlfriend's crippling skin addiction. I don't know why. 10,000 diamonds just ain't enough. If you want to help the channel out, all you gotta do, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and watch this video all the way to the end. So thank you so much for those who are supporting the content. Now let's jump back into the weekly recap. And then we go on to day number 2. Now, let me tell you, day number 2 was a joy to cast some of these games because we got to see some very intense matchups. One in particular, but let's go in order. Starting things off with Team SMG versus NC. Now, let me tell you, SMG this season, so far maintaining their 100% win rate already feels good after last season only finishing up as a runner-up and not taking it all the way and qualifying for MSC. But besides that, SMG had some solid drafting here. They were able to get the Joy, they were able to get the X-Borg on their side, and from the side of NC, it felt like they wanted to play a team fight composition, which is very typical to them, because their identity is very much, hey, we like team fighting, we like having a composition that requires a lot of chemistry and coordination, because that's how they excel at the game. I don't blame them. I don't blame them. But when they're up against a team like SMG, and after NC's performance last week, I wouldn't put it past them to think that there is more potential in this squad than what meets the eye. Unfortunately, against a veteran like Team SMG, who I personally think is very well equipped to deal with the two versions of NC, whether they are running Hyde and Mali, or if they're going with Hawk and Mali, or Hawk with Hyde. Both are generally kind of the same playstyle, but essentially it's whether or not they actually want to utilize the Ube strat or not. In this particular case, we do see Hyde and as well as Hawk take the helm on the very first game against Team SMG, and their overall teamfight composition looked good. It felt very straightforward, don't get me wrong. But what we saw from the side of Team SMG, they snowballed out of control. They had plenty of peel coming in from this X-Borg, who continues to dominate the league as of right now. The Melissa to help scale. Their overall team fighting became difficult because they had Faramis, and SMG was able to kind of walk all over them. And yes, I would say that Team SMG did them dirty. Why? Because they gave them hope. In this game, at the 18th minute, 33 seconds, as much as I would like to believe that SMG wanted to come off clean, NC were putting up a tough fight, like a really, really tough fight. Unable to close out these games, SMG ends up throwing the fight 18 minutes, 33 seconds into the game, and then 20 minutes, 33 seconds, we see that NC was able to find a kill on towards Sasa's side, and let me tell you, Sasa was not happy about that. Not happy at all. In the end, Team SMG were able to close out game number 1 after a very long series and a good defense from NC. But man, SMG plus aggression, they gotta keep that under check, because we jump over to game number 2, and oh my goodness, did it... Oh, how do I describe this? It was almost bad. It was almost bad. In this particular case, Team SMG were going with an armor shred composition. The idea is that you use the armor shred coming in from Irithel and as well as Dairoth to stack upon each other to get a superb amount of damage, putting your armor almost as close to 0 as possible and just shredding through them with the extra crit and the early game damage that both of these heroes bring. More importantly, I think in this particular case, Team SMG had a solid idea, right? They had the Angela to kind of double up on the early game on top of having the Dairoth, which is already a good +1. I think it was a little greedy that they decided to lock in Yuzong just to have a secondary option to kind of turn volatile lanes into a more favorable one if somebody decides to overextend, or they think that trading might not result into anything in the lane. In that particular case, NC, on the other hand, unfortunately didn't have many answers to it. They decide to play the Florin on their side to try to manage the aggression, but I don't think they expected how effectively Team SMG Stormy was going to play this Angela. Very aggressive, very in-your-face pre-level 4. After level 4, you just see him constantly using his ultimate off cooldown whenever he gets the chance. And I think, you know, Team SMG were playing this composition really well until you start to add the red hot blood in them. And oh my goodness, Sasa and as well as Saksa nearly throwing the game 2 times. Like, very big moments as well. At the end of it, Team SMG did win, but just to show you, give you guys some context of how bad some of these throws were, 10 minutes, 30 seconds into game number 2, Sasa throws really hard, terrified underneath the turret. 13 minutes and 8 seconds, he tries to take on a 1v1 against Zavs. He's fully itemized. Zavs is fully itemized. You shouldn't be going for this 1v1. Worst yet, he already used his Winds of Nature. He used it early on, and he thought he could survive with the Heart Guard, and then he forgets about the flooring. Like, Stormy isn't the only support there, and it's unfortunate to see that Sasa let the aggression get better of him in those moments because the rest of his team were looking to end the game. They could have peeled for you. They could have done so much there, but instead he ran it down. Look, no hate towards him. I love Sasa. We're basically the same age, and I respect him as a player. But boy, did this this could have gone to a game 3. I'm just saying, it could have gone to a game 3. And now we talk about one of the most exciting games that we have seen this week, coming in with SRG versus TODAK. SRG sitting at the top of the standings with 100% overall win rate, and TODAK looking to come together and abusing the transfer window to add Zaim Senpoi as their mid laner instead of Martizi. Rather interesting decision overall, but I like to see, you know, Zaim Senpoi. I have a little bit of bias to him, same as Sadafa. Both of us agree that he is a wonderful mid laner, but more importantly, he's also a very good shot caller. So we obviously had a couple of conversations about whether or not he's gonna jive with the rest of the team. I mean, you know what it's like having so many voices kind of like screaming over the comms. It can get a little complicated, but based on his overall performance, it looks like Zaim Senpoi did a good job. As we jump into the very first game, we see that SRG decides to go for a team fight composition designed to make sure that they could get this Novaria up and running as soon as possible to harass their opponents while having some strong ways to keep the enemy at bay. While TODAK decided to take a different approach. They saw the number of tanks that SRG was bringing in game number 1, and they thought, you know what? Alpha is a good idea. And don't get me wrong, the logic is there. True damage, you're able to cut through the large amounts of stats that are from these tanks and really take advantage of the situation. They didn't get access to carry, unfortunately, because they decided to go for Wanwan on Chiku this time round to make sure that he doesn't get caught as easily. As much as Terizla likes to flicker into the backline and Go just liking to make that impact, the natural inbuilt Purify coming from this Wanwan makes it just a wee bit harder for SRG to really get their hands all over him. And that's not all. In the drafting phase, we see that they committed 4 bans towards ZachQT. They wanted to make sure that ZachQT wasn't a major player in this particular game. He ended up getting Novaria anyway, so it kind of felt wasted that they had 4 bans targeted towards him, and at the end of the day, SRG just compensated by pivoting their comp a little bit to have 3 tanks and a Novaria that actually opens up the map a lot more efficiently than rather than to throw bodies into bushes in hopes that something is going to happen off of it. I think at the end of the day that TODAK in this particular position honestly had a couple of really good moments. But Super Red made the difference in this game. At the 9th minute 58 second mark, Claude, you can see him, he's limit testing. He's checking out how much damage he actually has at max stacks on this Claude. But then at the 17th minute, 50 seconds, we see the game-winning fight that sets SRG apart from TODAK. They have very similar styles, don't get me wrong, but I think in this particular case, it's clear throughout this game that SRG was able to recover a lot better from their mistakes in comparison to TODAK, who takes a much longer approach and really stretching out fights to break even. In game number 2, we see TODAK decide to adjust their composition by a lot. It was interesting to see how this game actually played out, with their draft starting off with the X-Borg to make sure that Go just wasn't able to leave the lane as healthy as he would like to. We do actually see Rival get his hands on the Boxia, and for the very first time in MPL MY, we are seeing a Boxia doing what he's supposed to do. invade towards the strong side of the map and put your opponent behind by as much EXP as possible to make sure that the momentum and, more importantly, the tempo is being controlled by your team rather than leaving it into the hands of your opponents. I think SRG in this particular case really started to struggle, with Pancake unfortunately having his only win condition to land a kick on this Irithel. I mean, TODAK's comp is designed around, we'll let you engage and we'll go in whenever we feel like it, and if you make that mistake, and more importantly, if SRG is at a man disadvantage, TODAK is going to run you down. We see that the Irithel has sprint already, and once she's scaled up, there was no real means of actually closing the distance onto her once the engage has already been fulfilled by the side of SRG. Again, this is on the condition that they don't catch Chiku, but I think with the way that TODAK was playing and considering that Yums was peeling very, very well, on top of the fact that Zyme Senpai made it nearly impossible to get any benefit when you find a pick, even if it's not Irithel, the true damage just cut through people like Super Skies and as well as Gojas when he's on top of his targets. Even Pancake felt the wrath of the Mystic Gush coming in from Zyme Senpai, making it essentially impossible for SRG to reclaim the gold lead that they were trying to develop in the earlier stages of the game. Now, don't get me wrong, SRG did make the mistake of locking in the Cho as their third pick, but what I didn't expect was in game number 3, the Hanzo as their final pick in this game being a game changer, a huge game changer in a matter of fact. It felt like whoever picked Cho ended up losing here, because with SRG's Hanzo, we jump back to TODAK's draft and you could see that it was pretty standard. It was all about playing the early game, maintaining the momentum, figuring out that information, slowly peel your opponents, and eventually Chiku was going to carry the game, but that didn't happen this time round, and here's why. Now, obviously, TODAK had some extremely smart moves, and I wanted to highlight that. So we'll start at the 4th minute, 5th second of the game, where we see Chiku swap lanes going down to the bottom side of the map, even though Turtle was on timer and was going to eventually spawn. But at the 4th minute, 41 second, unfortunately for SRG, they didn't rotate fast enough, and instead, they ended up creating a window of opportunity for Chiku to actually shred the entire gold plate. Now that he's got all that gold, at the 6 minute 42nd second, the 6 minute 42 second, man, that was a weird way of putting it, he rotates it back up top just before the turtle spawns so that the EXP laner is able to make an impact during that neutral objective fight. Now, these were all fun and games, and yeah, that was a huge gold lead coming in from Chiku's side. Unfortunately for Clint, he's not able to kind of keep up with that type of cash flow going in to Chiku's pocket. But then this is where the Hanzo starts to kick in. Now, unfortunately for Cho, he's unable to get to Clint effectively unless he's got the flicker. And based on how SRG are playing, they're making sure that they are protecting their king, Super Red. So as long as Super Red doesn't get caught, that's already a big plus point. The second plus point is the fact that Hanzo's body and spirit form, you can leave your body very, very far away. And honestly, after seeing last week with the way Yuna was playing, high ground defensing from his fountain, that was already pretty crazy. But I think with Super Skies, it got even crazier. When you look at the draft, there's actually no way to effectively get on top of Hanzo's body unless you're an idiot and position yourself way too far forward. So many times we saw TODAK make an effort to either look for the Clint or identify where the body of the Hanzo was supposed to be, both of which they failed at doing so because SRG are just controlling the map as much as they can, clearing out choke points, and better yet, nobody else from the side of TODAK could really do anything. They were waiting for the engage coming in from SRG, and at the 12 minute 23 second, we see how much of a problem that was, with the Spirit Demon form just harassing people once he was full build. There is nothing you could really do. Nobody could 1v1 this guy. No, it was gross. It shouldn't have been allowed. It really shouldn't. I don't know why Hanzo is getting away so much, but maybe that's just the Malaysian meta. A little bit tough to say as of right now. We'll wait until maybe other regions start to pick it up, and then I'll look into it deeper. But for now, this was an impressive game. We come to the breaking point of TODAK. With no means of getting onto the real body, their only other target was Super Red. And at the 12 minute 51 second, they got desperate and they threw everything at the wall to ensure Super Red's death. They make this attempt to pinch him down. It goes well, they get the kill, but the retaliation coming in from SRG was so devastating. Nobody could deal with the Hanzo, let's not forget that, but more importantly, the fact that the Edith was still alive, the fact that the Yves was still alive, and more importantly, the fact that Pancake was able to turn that fight around with a single wild charge already put TODAK at a significant man disadvantage, and you would imagine that they could run away. Not from this Hanzo. They could not run away from this Hanzo at all. So that was, it was a macro intensive game. It wasn't as bloody as I would have imagined this game was supposed to be, because SRG and TODAK, I feel like they play very similarly. They overheat, they like to calm down, they make a mistake, they adjust to recover, but they always play as a team. Looking at this game, we saw two different sides, with TODAK actually respecting SRG and SRG really playing it patient, taking their time until they found that one opportunity to really stick it to TODAK. And honestly, GG well played to SRG. As they continued out the week, they still had a 100% win rate from this point on. The final game of week 3, day number 2, ended off with Red versus the Homebois. Now, Homebois suffering some devastating losses in week number 2, with Red Esports going 1-1 the previous week. Coming into this, it was a little 50-50. We didn't know whether the Homebois had kind of recovered or whether Red Esports were feeling better compared to last week. And we saw that, unfortunately, Red Esports, they don't feel very ready. I don't know how much they've invested in Exor, and don't get me wrong, I'm sure he's a great player with the right tools, but right now, it feels like he can't really communicate with the rest of his team. They look very disconnected. In both the games that we saw him play today, it was... Let me tell you, I'm looking at the stats right now, and I'm just going to move past it because it is not good. It is not good at all. It was basically a nothing game, with the draft being even weirder than what I would have imagined, having Barats played in both of those games, knowing that they were going to play Xborg as well as Gord. It didn't feel necessary. I don't know what's going on with Red. I do hope they kind of pull themselves together here, because they've got some excellent players when they know what they're doing, but how do they continue to achieve that level of consistency throughout the league? Just keep in mind that MPL MY, we are the most entertaining only because we are the least consistent overall as a league. A lot of our teams try their very best, but if we're talking about the top 1%, as you can see TODAK and SRG are currently in, because they are more consistent no matter the situation, more than some days you are hot, some days you are cold. Hey, thanks for watching the video, guys. Now, the video was extra long because there's so much to actually cover this week, so we've split it up into a multiple based on each of the days. So you can go check out the next one right over here. This right here.